introduce yourself to us, like to our audience, please?
Certainly. I'm the Director of Digital Innovation at the University Design Institute, Arizona State University. I've been at ASU for 11 years, and I spent the first 7 years leading the Adaptive Learning Initiative, and that's where I worked with ALEKS, and I'll tell you about that journey today. Before joining Arizona State University, I've worked in educational technology for the last 30 years and have had a chance to work at hundreds of other universities. So if you have questions, feel free to ask them either in the chat or in the Q&A. I'm going to try to leave some time at the end of the session so that we can get into more details about what you are interested in and how it can help. Arizona State
Absolutely.
University. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry,
Did you?
I'm going to pause now. I'm sorry to interrupt. As Dale said, absolutely, we do want to keep this as interactive as possible. So please use the chat box. If you have any questions, pop them in the Q&A box and we can cover it towards the end of the session. And yes, this is being recorded because I see a lot of questions about that, and you will get a certificate following the webinar. That's all from my side. I'm going to mute myself, but I'll be in the background. If you need anything, just give a shout. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. As I was saying, Arizona State University has a number of wonderful attributes, and one of them is being the most innovative university in America 9 years in a row. We have worked hard to introduce technology into the teaching process. ALEKS is one of many tools that we use to do that. And what I'll talk about today is the process of how we arrived at a decision to move from mass production to mass personalization, and how ALEKS has helped us successfully make that journey. Arizona State University is located in the southwestern region of the United States. If you're familiar with Los Angeles and Las Vegas, they're both a 1-hour flight from Phoenix, where I live. And the state also has the southern border with Mexico. So we have quite a few new immigrants from Mexico and from other regions of the United States who've come to Phoenix in the last 30 years. We're also home to the Grand Canyon. If you have a chance to visit, we hope you'll come to see the seventh wonder of the natural world. It is tremendous experience if you can visit Arizona someday. And Arizona State is located in the Sonoran Desert. So we are in a hot, dry climate, like many of you. And the famous icon for our desert is the saguaro cactus. And this is, you may have seen in Western movies in the Wild West. So the university is located in Phoenix. We are the largest single university in the United States. We have approximately 170,000 students this year. More than half are fully online, over 85,000 now. And that is a long-range strategy that we have to offer more and more educational services online so that we can reach new populations that need assistance. ALEKS is part of that solution. So we'll talk about the use in our campus-based courses and our online-based courses. I work at the University Design Institute now, and we provide support for our colleagues here at ASU and also around the world. We've done over 40 design engagements within ASU and trained hundreds of leaders. And then globally, I'm working in Kazakhstan, Korea, in 8 different countries in Africa, Latin America. I've done ALEKS implementations in these countries, Mexico, Brazil, Kazakhstan, Vietnam. So it's not just a US-centric view of how this technology can help your students. It's an exciting opportunity. It's a global product, and there are many different opportunities to use it. For us, this is part of a digital transformation process that began back in 2013. We've worked on a wide range of courses, as you can see here, from algebra to psychology. We started off with math and the sciences, and eventually we started doing the philosophy, psychology, history courses, because we found that you can do digital transformation with all of the different subjects. What we're focused on is eliminating large lectures and implementing much more interactive classrooms. That's the large theme. You may see this referred to sometimes as a hybrid model or a blended model or a flipped model. The idea is to create more interactive classroom experience for the students. Now, we had a big challenge. We needed to change how we taught math and other subjects because we were struggling with student attention. I'm sure you all feel the same way. Today in the classroom, there are many, many distractions. Students all bring their computers and their phones, and sometimes they have more than one phone. So it's hard to capture their imagination and hold their attention. And we see that the classroom experience has changed dramatically over the last 20 years with the advent of Wi-Fi and the cell phone. Adding technology to that environment is not necessarily a good thing, because even though you think that the students are focused on the lesson, they may be also doing things like looking at baby photos or listening to music or reading web pages or social media. So the technology has to be integrated into a new pedagogy. Just using technology in an existing classroom is not necessarily adding value to the learning process. I like to start with this quote from one of my intellectual heroes, Buckminster Fuller. "We never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete." And that's what we were focused on with ALEKS, building a new model of teaching that would enable us to transition away from the lecture. So we had a reason for doing the new model. We wanted to solve a problem that was persistent. We were having an average 40% failure rate in college algebra every year for a decade. I have data going all the way back to 2005, and it was consistently poor results. So 4 in 10 of our students were failing. And that's, for us, unacceptable. We had to do something because we were losing a lot of our first-year students in the STEM majors because they couldn't pass algebra. Now, sometimes people blame the students because they may be poorly prepared or they may not have the proper high school education. But what we found was the problem was actually the pedagogy, not the pupil. And we began to focus on that because we knew we needed to do something different. The students were consistently failing that traditional lecture model. So we had a purpose here, which is to enable student success. And we had some specific objectives like improving critical thinking, increasing student subject mastery, increasing student retention, and improving instructor insight. Each one of these is measurable. We have a 90% goal for freshman retention. When we started this journey back in 2002, the new president, Michael Crow, took office. He's still the president in 22 years later. We had a 75% student retention rate from first to second year. So 90% was an aspirational goal. We want students to do 60 minutes of math every day so that they can build those math skills. I'm sure many of you are math teachers. Hopefully all of you are teaching some form of college math. The challenge is getting the students to do the work. So that was one of the motivating objectives. We want 90% of our students to get a grade of C or better, which is a passing grade in our system. We want to reduce the withdrawal rate to under 5%. Withdrawal is a serious problem in America because students pay for the class and then they drop out and they have to pay for it again if they want to take it again to pass it. So it's a significant barrier to success. And we want to identify the struggling students by week 2. That's to help us, the instructors and faculty members and support staff, identify how to help those students. So when we looked at what was happening in our environment, we saw that there was a transformation underway from mass production, like these CDs. I still have some CDs, but I don't think I even have a CD player in my house. I still have maybe 30 of them lying around the house. To mass personalization with 3 million songs on our phones. So this transformation is occurring in many aspects of our lives. In navigation, we used to buy paper maps. Today, we have a map of the world on our phone. When I visited Dubai several years ago, I was able to navigate everywhere, though I don't read Arabic. And that is a huge transformation in the mass personalization movement. Even in healthcare, mass production was the rule for thousands of years. Today, we have DNA and other analyses that allow us to personalize the treatment plan for individuals. So you see these trends in our environment, and then we ask ourselves, what's happening in education? Well, we have a mass production model. We teach all students the same lesson at the same time. For thousands of years, that was all we could do because we didn't have technology. When technology started to evolve in the 2000s, we suddenly could do something more. And we set the goal to teach the right lesson to the right student at the right time. So this is where we transform the teaching process. No individual teacher can deliver this kind of personalization to large numbers of students. So we need a technology as a tool to help us do that. We did it because we think there are some basic principles in this conversation, and we wanted to recognize them. Every student has unique learning needs. This has always been true. We simply never had a way to address the reality before. Students learn best by solving problems. Once again, this is a good learning science that's taught us that the students need to be doing the work, not just watching the instructor do the work, solving problems. Students must demonstrate mastery. That's different from memorization. Memorization was the rule for many, many decades because students could pass the test by memorizing enough formulas or enough processes to successfully do that. But now we want them to master every lesson at the same level. The success depends on the teacher. You can't have a technology that is not integrated into the teaching process. As I mentioned, just attaching it to an existing process is not going to work. So as we talk about the technology today, it's important that we learn to trust it as a teaching tool and that we can integrate it into our process. And then finally, provide individualized instruction to students. This is where that mass personalization comes in. Every student has a relationship with their instructor that supports their learning process. So there's more of an individualized interaction rather than a group presentation. Well, we had tried a lot of things before we discovered ALEKS. We first thought we could do a better job if we had smaller class sizes. We used to have classes that were 100 students. So we thought we'll just reduce them. That'll give the instructors more opportunity to interact with students. Unfortunately, it didn't work. There is simply too much information and too many different needs in that group of students for any one instructor to successfully manage. So that was too much effort and unsuccessful in enabling student success. Then we recommended students try taking college algebra at another local college. We call them community colleges in America. The students would go there, take the class. The expectation was that they would return to continue it at Arizona State. The problem was they never came back. They simply disappeared. So we were losing a lot of students that we were referring to the community colleges. Third effort was to try to create a developmental math course. Some of you may have these in your universities. This is a course that is non-credit, where students are trying to get remedial assistance so that they can prepare for the 4-credit college algebra course. And we created an entire course. We had about 40% of our students tracked into that course. And again, unfortunately, it didn't work. So now we've failed 3 times, and we're searching for another solution that will help us enable student success. and we come across the mass personalization model. Now, ALEKS is a tool that's been under development for over 25 years. So it was growing in capability and in success over that period of time. It was initially created by two professors in California at the University of California. So it was, in a sense, getting better and better as we were searching for a tool. In 2016, we decided we had to transform both our pedagogy and our technology through this mass personalization model. And I'll spend the rest of the time talking about how we did that. On December 7th of 2015, I was in a meeting with a group of senior academic leaders, and they decided that in the fall, that is August of 2016, we would begin this new journey. So we eliminated the developmental math course. All students would be tracked directly into college algebra. We established a test when ready model that's mastery based. So when a student has successfully completed the lesson, they can take the test. They don't have to wait for the rest of the class. And we decided to use ALEKS, Adaptive Instructional System, for all of our college algebra sections. These were major decisions that transformed the teaching process and the learning outcomes at Arizona State University. Now, what does it really mean for the students when I say personalization or personalized learning paths? Well, it delivers insight. It delivers insight to two different people, the student and the teacher. So that insight overcomes a huge problem for us. Historically, we could not answer these basic questions. Our old model was a black box. The questions such as who needs help, what do they need help with, what's the best way to help, were hard to answer because we didn't have enough information. ALEKS helped us overcome that by delivering a massive amount of information. This is an information graphic that we put together from ALEKS data. And what you're looking at here is you're looking at the personalized learning paths of a 100 student section at Arizona State University. And what I want you to notice first is in the vertical axis, there are 370 lessons. These were all decided by our professors, the math faculty. They selected the lessons in ALEKS that they wanted to include in college algebra. So we customized the system. And then what you're looking at on the horizontal axis is the time from August to December. So this is the fall semester for us. And each of the colored lines is a student. Now, the first thing I want you to notice is they don't all start in the same place. If we go back to the basic principles, every student has unique learning needs. This system does an initial knowledge check, and it determined that the students were at wildly different locations on their learning process. This has always been true. This will always be true, but we never knew it before, and we didn't have a tool to help us address that reality. So now we recognize the reality that we're dealing with, and we can see the individuals within this process. Here's a student that went from 0 to hero in one semester. The student worked really hard. Every one of the vertical lines is a mastery moment. Every one of the horizontal lines is the time on the learning process. So as you see the student progressing, sometimes they move very quickly through lessons they learned already, and sometimes they need to study quite a bit as they master that material. Now here's another student who at the first day of class had over half of the course topics mastered. So this student was able to finish the course in 2 months. We didn't make them wait until December, the end of the semester, to take the final exam. They took the exam on October 6th. So what you're seeing here is you're seeing a transformation in how we interact with the students. Test when ready means that this student is ready the first week of October and they can take the exam. So we're honoring their knowledge and their work, and we are saying to them, you're done with this course. You can go study another subject. The the faculty members also benefit because they can now focus on the students that need more help. And here's an example of a student that needs help. This student was doing quite well for 2 months, and then they flatlined. They were unable to continue to learn for whatever reason. The challenge for us as teachers is to find these students and provide the proper assistance. So that's where ALEKS is helping us. It's the identification and individualized instruction in that process. So we had in our college algebra program over 10,000 students a year. As I mentioned, we're a very large university. So this is the largest single course at Arizona State. We have over 50 instructors teaching it. And while our old model had 50 different versions of algebra, our new model is unified around one curriculum, one set of instructors, or excuse me, one set of examinations, and the technology, ALEKS. And what happened was a transformation in our outcome. The student success rate increased by 17 percentage points in the first 3 years of this new process. So we went from 62% success in fall of 2015 to 79% in fall of 2018. And that means that thousands of additional students successfully completed college algebra and can continue on to engineering or to other sciences, chemistry, physics, whatever they wanted to study. This for us was that transformational moment when we realized that the students weren't the problem, the pedagogy and the technology were the problem. Once we changed those two things, we were able to transform the learning outcomes. So what did we do? We eliminated lecture. There is no need for lecture any longer. We videotaped all of those lectures. We made a new design of the learning experience. So I'll talk a little bit about that now too. We had to create and configure all of that digital content. We recorded over 300 videos. The professors went in the studio, recorded instructional videos. Some of you might be familiar with Khan Academy. We did a similar type of video, an instructional video that explains every lesson. We provide the individualized instruction now in the classroom. I'll talk more about that. We use learning analytics. Since I showed you that information graphic, you understand that there's a lot of data that helps us track the students and measure their improvement so we can diagnose problems. We can lead students through problem-solving processes. That's the focus now for the teaching that goes on in the course. We have a number of studios at our university that the faculty members use. They can go in, they can record a little lecture. Here's an example of a professor solving a problem. So when the student is stuck in ALEKS, they can open this video and they can see one of our professors solving the problem. That was a big issue for the faculty to make sure that they were still helping the students learn, but they don't have to do the group lecture anymore. In the classroom, because the students still come to class 3 times a week, we have the professors providing individualized instruction, teaching students to develop strong study habits, and also monitoring their progress and performance. We also added teaching assistants to the classroom. So there are 4 other students in the classroom who are walking around answering questions. This enables us to create a much more personalized instructional process and also develop a stronger awareness of where the students are in their learning processes. The professors have a tablet computer that they can use to track a student. When the student asks a question, the professor can see the data for that individual student. Now, ALEKS is, as I mentioned, a tool that was developed. It's an acronym for Assessment and Learning in Knowledge Spaces. All of those topics that I mentioned earlier, 370 of them, were mapped to our curriculum. The initial knowledge check is a critical component of that. ALEKS uses artificial intelligence to decide what are the likely, or what is the probability that a student can successfully complete another question in this knowledge space. So the data that they've accumulated over the last 25 years enables them to do those probabilistic projections. Then it can do personalized lesson paths based on that data. It uses a mastery model where you have to successfully answer 3 problems in a row in order to demonstrate mastery. It also does periodic checks where it will test whether a student remembers the lesson from the past. And that way, if a student's not retaining that knowledge, it will reinforce that learning process with additional problems. So ALEKS is constantly monitoring and assessing the students in this learning process. And the students can actually lose topics if they don't demonstrate mastery. ALEKS takes away the topics, and this creates a motivation for the students to focus because they don't want to go backwards. What happened in a practical sense is we're moving from the LMS, which had a fixed lesson plan, to an adaptive system with variable plans, multiple plans. The presentation is moved from group to individual, and the content from common to personalized. The world is changing from static to dynamic instruction. ALEKS is just one example. Now, you're all familiar with the generative AI that is now available through ChatGPT and other tools. All of those tools are going to continue this progress towards mass personalization. ALEKS was just the first of many tools that are going to be available in the future for teaching. From a student perspective, what ALEKS is doing is it's helping them overcome individual difficulties. If a student struggles with a lesson, then ALEKS can actually go back into its database and it can pull up previous lessons for review. What we did was we actually included 4 years of high school math within our course design. So you have college algebra at the top, but then you have other support math learning processes underneath of that. And ALEKS can dig in to those and provide review for a student in order for them to master the lesson and move on. That's a process that's nearly impossible for a human to do for the number of students that we're working with. If you're doing one-on-one tutoring, this is basically what you're doing. You're helping a student identify their weakness, you're strengthening that student, and you're progressing through the learning process. So we've shifted from the delayed assistance that we used to have when the students would come to class and ask a question to rapid remediation. ALEKS is a real-time, 24/7 tutor that is available to help the student. And we see the students, they're studying at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. And as you know, very few professors are available to provide assistance at that time. So having the system available, it accelerates that remediation process, and students can watch the videos, do more exercises, continue learning when they can at their own discretion. From a practical standpoint, we're respecting their prior knowledge, responding to their learning needs, and reducing the gaps in their understanding. ALEKS uses a pie chart to map that progress. So you'll see this image quite a bit. The individual wedges of the pie are filled in as a student progresses. And that's what we're doing. We're really helping them progress through this personalized learning path. For the instructors, it's helping monitor the students, measure their performance, and maximize the outcomes of the course. There are many, many reports in ALEKS, and you can take the data, you can modify it, manipulate it, and measure a lot of different aspects of student work. We, for example, are measuring student engagement. Are they doing the 60 minutes of math every day? because as I mentioned, that's one of our objectives. So this dashboard in ALEKS allows us to see which students are spending time on math problem solving and which ones are not. And that's where we want to help. We want to make sure they are doing the work to learn the lessons. In order to make this transformation work, we needed a team of support personnel. We had the faculty members who were leading the transformation, but we also had instructional designers, technologists. We had a number of vendor personnel from McGraw Hill working with us to configure the system and to train the faculty. We had graphic designers, video producers. I mentioned we created hundreds of videos. Librarians, they helped us curate content. We added additional materials from an open source or OER material library. So we were constantly creating more and more learning resources for the students. And then we had our leaders that took the risk and decided it was worth it. So this whole process and this team was necessary in order for us to be successful. If you're going to embark on this type of transformation, you need a team that can understand the challenge and work together to make sure that you can overcome it. Your challenge may be different from ours. I was being honest earlier by saying we had a specific problem, which is 40% student failure rate. Yours might be different. So addressing your challenge is really the key. Now, in order to do that, we needed leadership. We needed it from our faculty members, from department chairperson, from the college dean, from the university provost. All of these leaders needed to be aligned for success. If you're starting this process, you need to begin the conversation with all of your leaders to say, what are we trying to solve here? What is the problem that we want to address using a technology and a new pedagogy? If any one of these leaders is not in agreement, then your program will probably fail, because each of them is important for the consistency and the necessary guidance to overcome any obstacles in this process. We had very strong provost and department chair support. They were involved from the very beginning, and they were encouraging the faculty members to experiment and to solve this problem. We had some funding to pay our faculty members for the extra work they were doing. We had 6 faculty members who worked on the design team, so they all got extra salary to make this transformation. We had great leadership from the faculty and creativity. They had to solve hundreds of problems along the way, like how do we give an exam in the middle of the semester when other students are still studying? So we had to come up with a way to provide a final exam in the classroom and not disrupt either the exam student or the other students that were continuing their studies. We had to create a peer mentoring program for faculty so that they could train each other. And we needed a lot of patience, because just like everything else in life, this is a learning process, and the faculty had to learn how to teach again using this new tool and this new pedagogy. That's a long-term process. That's not a one-week training. That's years and years of working together, experimentation, and eventually what we think of as becoming experts in this mass personalization model. So after we did all that, we looked at the data and we celebrated, because the faculty put in a tremendous amount of work and they were able to successfully help the students complete college algebra. So we got together and I brought some bottles of sparkling apple cider. We opened up a couple of bottles and toasted the great work of our faculty. I think that we want to create an environment where everyone feels like they have a chance to contribute to that process and everyone feels rewarded when the success occurs. I'll finish with this quote: "The best way to predict the future is to invent it." If you are experimenting with ALEKS or with ChatGPT or with any other tool, you should be thinking about inventing something that will help you solve a problem at your university, whether it's student study habits or their inability to pass an examination or a particularly hard lesson, you have the power now and you have the tools to invent solutions. So I'll pause there and open it up for questions. I look forward to hearing your thoughts on your challenges and helping hopefully solve some problems at your universities.
Thank you, Dale. That was very interesting.
Thank you. Did we have any questions in the Q&A or in the chat?
So there was one that came in. It says, how do you pace students through an ALEKS course? Do you have regular deadlines to specify how far students should have got through the course at a specific point to complete the demands of the other subjects?
Great question, Lynn. The pacing was done by week. And what we encourage the students to do is complete at least 20 topics per week. And the faculty defined a model. They said if a student starts with 0 topics and they are successfully completing 20 per week, they will be able to get through the entire course. So that gave us some flexibility on pacing. We could say to a student who has no topics on the first day after the initial knowledge check, if you're consistently completing 20 topics, you will finish the course in one semester. We can also say to the student that had 200 topics finished, if you finish 20 per week, you will finish early. So it's that pacing, but it's flexible pacing. And what we would encourage the students to do is to set their own goals, to say, when you get to 100 topics, you take the first exam, at 200 topics, the second, at 300 topics, the third, and then at 370, you take the final. So we would encourage them to say, I want to take the first exam within the next 2 weeks. So they would work towards getting to 100 topics if they were below that number. So this is a process of helping them define their own learning process and not simply saying you have to finish by September 1st or October 1st.
Thank you so much. And there's another one. Veron says, suppose that you notice that some students are not working 1 hour a day. What do you do?
So we have what we call instructional interventions. We have 4 of them. The first is the conversation in the classroom. Since the students are required to come to class 3 times a week, the professor has access to the students, and they usually prepare a short list of students who need immediate attention. They go to that list, they say, here are 5 students I'm going to talk to first today. And that's based on things like the student hasn't done any work in ALEKS in the past week. The student is not successfully mastering, even though they're spending time, they're not moving forward. So there are a number of criteria that the professors created to indicate this student needs individualized instruction. So those, let's say there are 5 students, the professor talks to them first in the class, says, hey, Dale, I see you haven't done any work in ALEKS in the past 3 days. What's going on? And then the student might say, I might say, well, professor, I had a paper in history, so I was working on that, but now it's done, so I can focus on college algebra. Okay, that's fine. Just make sure you catch up. We want you to stay on track. Those kinds of conversations are happening constantly in the classroom. So that's the first intervention. The second intervention is we have the teaching assistant. So the professor would say, this student needs additional attention. I'm going to ask the teaching assistant to spend 15 minutes with me, with Dale. And then the teaching assistant will come over and say, let's look at what you're working on. It looks like you're misunderstanding the problem, or you're inverting these 2 operations. You should do them in a different sequence. All those things we work on in class. The third intervention is tutoring. We have a student assistance center. If a student is not making progress and the first 2 instructional interventions didn't work, then we ask them to go to tutoring. We give them a sheet of paper that they take to the tutoring center. They have to get it signed by the tutor that says they worked with them for an hour. And if that doesn't solve the problem, then the 4th intervention is office hours. And we require a student to come to meet with a professor in private in their office. And that's where you might find out that the student has a health problem, or the student has a financial problem, or the student has a family issue that's causing a lot of stress, and they can't talk about that in class. They're not comfortable saying something to the professor in a public forum. So in the office hours, you can find out things that might be causing the problems in math that are not math related. So those 4 instructional interventions, we train the teachers to do, and they develop the ability to do them very, very quickly. So they can do a diagnostic of their class and say, I need to talk to these students first, and then I'm going to talk to this group of students next, and they kind of work their way around the classroom. Many students don't need assistance. They're simply working their way through the course material and they're making good progress. So it's the ones that are struggling that we're looking for.
She says, thank you. This is very clear.
Good.
Glad that helped. And I think
And
we've got one more. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, we had to develop all of these techniques. We were struggling because when you take a teacher who's been lecturing for 20 years and you tell them they can't lecture anymore, that they have to do the more individualized instruction, it takes time. So we built up all of these techniques that I'm talking about in order to adapt to the new environment. So don't get frustrated. If you try ALEKS, it takes some time to become comfortable, learning how to use the dashboards, learning how to create instructional interventions, learning how to manage the classroom. All those things are new.
Absolutely. We got one more from Rosina. It says, what would you say sets ALEKS apart from other learning and teaching platforms? That's a very interesting one.
Yeah. So there were 2 other platforms that we looked at very closely. One was from Pearson. It's called My Math Lab. Some of you may be familiar with that. And the other was Khan Academy. That is now adaptive. The thing that led us to ALEKS was really there were several, but the primary one was the number of years that ALEKS has been doing this. The level of data and the predictive capabilities of ALEKS far exceeded the other systems. ALEKS was designed from the very beginning to be a predictive tool. So it's using the data from these millions of students that have used it over the last 25 years to predict how to help the next student. And we spent 3 days with our faculty team, went to the engineering center for ALEKS to spend 3 days with their engineers to learn all about how it works. And they came back convinced that they could trust the technology. I mentioned that earlier. If you don't trust the predictive capability of the technology, then you're not going to really take advantage of it because you're always going to be second guessing whether the technology is doing the job. So as you learn more about ALEKS, I encourage you to try it. We also did an exercise where the professors were students in the different tools. There were students in ALEKS, in Khan Academy, and in My Math Lab. And they felt like the student learning experience was significantly better in ALEKS. And the last thing that convinced them that ALEKS was a more appropriate tool for us was that they could put the videos that they made right into ALEKS, which you couldn't do in the other 2 systems. So now when a student is looking for help at 1 o'clock in the morning and they click on the video link, they see our video. They don't just see some generic video from an unknown author of a textbook. And that was really important for our professors. They wanted to be part of the learning experience, even if it was a videotape, not a live lecture.
Thank you. Any other questions? By the way, Dale, this was a fantastic session. Thank you so much. I learned a lot about ALEKS myself today.
Great. Well, there's a lot to learn. I want to encourage you to get a copy, talk to your representative from McGraw Hill, experiment with it. As I mentioned, I've done this in Vietnam with teachers. We did 8th grade math in Vietnam, which was interesting. because we weren't working with college algebra. We were working at a lower level. ALEKS goes from third grade math all the way to pre-calculus. So we were experimenting with a group of teachers in the eighth grade there. And then we did it in Mexico for a college prep program. It's something that I've seen work in all these different environments.
Thank you. And I've dropped them my email address, which is marketing.mia@mheducation. So if you have any further questions on ALEKS, if you need a demo or you need one of our reps to get in touch with you, just let us know. We're more than happy to help you.
And if you'd like to
Well,
get in touch with me at some point, my email is dale.johnson@asu.edu. Feel free to reach out to me directly if you have any follow-up questions. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to answer any specific questions you might have. I
thank
work
you,
with,
Bill.
as I mentioned, I work with the colleagues all over the world. So I see similar challenges in different environments, and maybe I can help you solve problems for your university.
Thank you so much. And unless there are no more questions, I guess there are no more questions, then we can sign off for the day. Thank you so much again, Dale. I think this was great. I know this we had done this before, but I learned something new. So thank you so much for your time, and thanks for everyone for joining us today. I appreciate you being here. We will send across the recording to you and also your certificate in an email. Thank
Wonderful.
you for joining us.
Everyone have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.